I get really cool mail, and I just wanted to share a little bit of it with you right now. First up, recently arrived in the mailbox as recently as just a couple of hours ago from our friend in McCleary, Washington. Who could it be? I know who it is. This is our good friend Steve Willis. Do you know this guy? If you don't, you should look into him. I'm going to keep all of this really brief and try not to, go too long and get professorial on you. But Steve, a little background on him. He's, I think he's around my age, maybe a bit older, and he went to Evergreen College in Olympia, Washington, and his classmates were three famous cartoonists that you probably have heard of, if you haven't heard of Steve. Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, Futurama, and Life in Hell. Linda Berry, the great Linda Berry, and Charles Burns. And the fourth was Steve. And in some ways, he's well, in a lot of ways, Steve is just as creative and just as brilliant as these other cartoonists, and just as prolific. It's just that he's taken a different route in his life. I think there's something else in here too. There's usually his latest zine, which is what this is, and yep, a letter. And yes, there's always an issue of Morty comics. Now Morty, M-O-R-T-Y, Morty the dog is kind of his continuing character. He does a lot of other things, but Morty just keeps popping up. And one of the jokes is that Morty Comics is usually doesn't have Morty in it, and it's also usually, not always, one drawing. But here's the thing, folks. I actually haven't looked at it. Sam Peckinpah, eat your heart out. Isn't that great? And you can see here, what do we got? This is Morty Comics 10,809. So there's been over 10,000 of these put out. And you can probably tell this is a piece of cardboard from a product packaging. It looks like a pizza box. And it's original art. It's one of a kind. So the whole concept of Morty Comics is to kind of turn the idea of comics as commercial items, products, inside out. And Steve distributes these at no cost. Nobody ever pays for a Morty comic unless you buy it on eBay. He loves to distribute them in interesting ways. So he sends them in letters to his friends, but he also puts them like in menus or magazines in dentist waiting rooms, or an abandoned a bank that's been closed for 20 years. He happens to notice that the deposit box still opens, so he puts Morty Comics in there, or he'll tack one up on a bulletin board in his local post office, and on and on. He's visited me here in Port Townsend, Washington a few times, and it's always fun to take a pile of Morty Comics and stick them in different places. We actually have a payphone, believe it or not, in Port Townsend, and he stuck one behind a crevice in the payphone. So he loves the idea of people finding these and going, huh, what the heck? He's even looked up, he's had Byzantine systems, arcane systems, where he looks up strangers and finds a reason to send this to them in the mail. So Morty Comics, the brilliance of Steve Willis, that's just a sample. And he had a comic called Cranium Frenzy, going for a long while. Do I have any issues over here? I don't. He stopped calling this Cranium Frenzy, but a few issues ago he announced that he wasn't going to be drawing any more original issues of Cranium Frenzy. So what it ran for a few issues, about, I don't know, I don't have exact numbers, but say 10 issues. And then I think it was dormant for about 20 years. And Steve really wasn't drawing a lot of continuing narratives. He was doing Morty comics. I should also mention Morty comics isn't just drawings on paper. It's all kinds of stuff. Matchbooks, torn up sheets of, little puzzle pieces, or styrofoam mailing inserts, or all kinds of stuff. It's just amazing. But anyway, getting back to the zine, Cranium Frenzy. A few months ago, he announced that he was not going to be drawing Cranium Frenzy for a while, taking a break, but he invited his friends and fellow artists to jam with him. And Steve is a new wave artist, probably the premier do-it-yourself zinester from the movement that I think arose in the late 70s through the 80s, where we were all drawing our comics and taking them down to a copy shop and running off, 25 copies, getting it listed in Fact Sheet 5, and getting a quarter in the mail and sending your comic to somebody, or trading. A lot of trading went on back then. And that's how I got to know Steve. And his comics I've always loved them. He's brilliant, funny. I'm very much on his vibe. I wrote a piece about him in my Screwball Comics blog. So this is a jam, and I'm seeing it for the first time. Collisions of visions across the divisions. And I don't want to give it away. Actually, you're going to have a hard time. There's nowhere you can get this except by emailing Steve and sending him some money for postage and paper and whatnot. I have no idea. I try to drop him a 20 every few months. Whatever you think. I'll put his email in the down below, and I encourage you to write him. I'm sure he would like to hear from you. So let's see. This is the reality of tupality in the cranial locality. Wordplay, play with images. Looks like this guy, Steve, has a thing about floating heads, and I can see that's a head floating right there. And then here we can see a different art style. So this is a wonderful experiment. The artist he's collaborating with here is drawing Steve's heads the way he draws them sometimes. So that's pretty cool. This is a completely different art style. Oh my God. I'm seeing this for the first time, like I said. That's fantastic. Oh, and it's about dogs too. So, deers and dogs. Oh, and there's Morty right there. That's Morty the dog. You can tell he's a male. By the way, anytime I'm voting locally in local elections, and there's only one candidate, I always write in Morty the dog. Someday he'll get elected to office here in Washington, maybe. Who knows? Anyway, that's a little bit. Oh, I dropped it. That's a little bit about Steve Willis. This is a separate little comic, one of his best stories. If you just saw this like listed, without the cover, you'd read, "As I recall the 60s." And you'd think, oh, here's a guy doing a story about growing up in the 1960s. But look who's on the cover. Abe. And what's so brilliant about this comic is what's written here applies to the 1960s and the 1860s. Both times of tremendous upheaval in the United States. Okay, lots more to say about Steve Willis. Someday, somebody needs to write a book about this guy, or a really long article, and really go into what he does. Next up, real quick, from the New York Review of Books, which has a division called the New York Review of Comics, but this one is New York Review of Books. I spent a pleasant few hours with this. It's called From Ted to Tom, and what it is, it's the correspondence of Edward Gorey between him and another guy. It's all the stuff Edward Gorey sent this guy, whose name I don't remember. Let me see. Let me find his name. Tom Fitzharris. Sorry, Tom. This is a beautiful job. Tom writes a wonderful introduction in the beginning, explaining how he met Gorey. There's a self-portrait of Gorey in his trademark full-length fur coat. And the friendship that they had. And remarkably, they were kindred spirits. They had a lot of commonalities, things they were interested in, including dance, ballet. I almost said modern dance just by reflex. I don't think it was modern dance. I think it's classical dance. Anyway, Tom receives in the mail shortly after meeting Edward Gorey, and knowing who he is, by the way, and being a fan, he receives this envelope in the mail. Can you beat that? Holy crap. And on the back of the envelope is this. So it's two masked dogs wearing sweaters that have the letter T on them. It's a beautifully done book. It's all beautifully designed. It's the perfect size. And Gorey, when he didn't have a typewriter, he would hand letter interesting quotes. He would, this includes some, mail from Gorey letters, but they're not too personal, but at the same time, they give you a real feeling for who he was. I actually don't know a lot about Edward Gorey. I appreciate his stuff, but I've never become a Gorey-phile. I think I've kind of been scared to, because I see how obsessive people can get about his stuff, and I know I would have a lot of competition. And I tend to try to, because I've always, kind of had a limited budget, I decided, I think I'm going to collect stuff that other people aren't that interested in, but is worthy of having attention paid to it. So I've kind of avoided Gorey. But this is a book you can buy, for whatever the going rate is. Here, $24.95 in the U.S., $33.95 in Canada. Sorry, Canadians. Sorry for everything that's happening right now. Oh my God, believe me, there's a lot of Americans who aren't crazy about what's happening. But I digress. So this is just page after page of fascinating, previously unpublished Gorey art. This is I think my favorite of them all. Can you make out that word? I think it says French word for hour. This is the blue hour, a concept that Tom introduced to Ted. Edward, Ted. See, that's Gorey's nickname, in case you hadn't figured that out already. Anyway, the blue hour. And you see this, in nature. So, thank you, New York Review of Books. This is a lovely book. And speaking of mail art, or mail and correspondence, David Lasky is fond of doing that. As a matter of fact, David Lasky likes to do art on vintage postcards. Here's one that he did. This is a lovely, lovely, lovely piece. So, David Lasky is a Seattle-based cartoonist. He's around my age, I suspect. Maybe 4 or 5 years younger, I'm not sure. I've known David as a friend because I lived in Seattle. I've known him as a friend for, 10, 12 years. He's the co-author of a book about a graphic novel that got some notoriety about the Carter family. And actually, he and Frank started their journey on creating that graphic novel in my office. And they were there for several weeks, months, I don't remember, but it was really cool having them there and watching it all develop. And this is kind of an ode to comics right here. Isn't that lovely? I actually love this so much that I bought the original postcard, and I would show it to you, but I'm not quite sure where it is. But once a year, plus I want to keep this video short, once a year, David has been putting out a comic, which is a collection of his short comics called Manifesto Items. Here's number 6. Here's number 9. Isn't that a beautiful cover? David is just a outstanding comics creator. He plays with the form. He's very, there's autobio in his work. There's pop art. There's all kinds of interesting stuff. Classic illustration, notes of it. Pure comic poetry. He's very interested in poetry. And as a matter of fact, he's been writing poetry for several years. And he started publishing a separate book of poems once a year as well. Well, with the new manifesto items, number 13, which he's calling Lucky 13, to dispel the bad luck, he's combined the poetry and the comics into a very unique publication. This is actually this is probably my favorite David Lasky comic book. The way the text and the comics and the drawings work against each other, work together, it is just beautiful. I'm going to put the address down below, and I really encourage you to send $15 and add some money for shipping. Might as well make it 20 to David. It's well worth it. This is never going to be published anywhere else. And this is a quality publication. It's on beautiful paper, beautiful cover. So I'm just going to give you a little taste of it because I want to save some of the surprises and keep this short. So when you open it up, you're treated to a David Lasky portrait of Columbo. Columbo in the later years. He's got his notebook. And look right here. Speaking of correspondence, here's a letter from Columbo. And he's writing to Jessica. Who's Jessica? Well, when you get, we'll get to that in just a second. And then we get into the book, and there's an introduction. There's poetry. There's comics. There's an incredible science fiction comic with an amazing concept about technological clothing. Insights into his process. He's been doing these, I don't even know what to call them, curly, op art, sort of, with poems and haikus. Here's a delightful comic, If the Sun and the Moon Went to Lunch. And if you've read David's stuff, or if you know him as a person, or have seen him, you understand he's a rare individual. He's a gentle soul, a kind soul, and he's always wanting to grow. There's just one of the things I really like about David is he's so life affirming. Yeah, he can get negative, just like anybody, but he really doesn't lay it on that thick. Contrary to me. Look at that. Just beautiful, beautiful stuff. Reminds me of Jerry Moriarty right there a little bit. So you got, oh, here's another wonderful, eyes and the feet talking to each other. I'm just going to read you just a little bit to give you a flavor. Setting, just after midnight on a Seattle futon. We are coming apart. It's the feet talking. We are coming apart. I mean, have you seen our yellow toenails? Have you seen the flakes of skin left behind on the sheets? And then the eyes talk. Sigh. Oh, you guys, we've seen it. Believe it. Though our right side contends with floaters on a daily basis that fly across our field of vision, it's said to be normal. We still see it all because, we're eyes. Just great stuff. Anyway, when you work your way through this stuff, which is just a delight. A smorgasbord of really interesting stuff. There's a tribute to Neil Adams. You come up upon another letter, and you see who Columbo is writing to. Murder, She Wrote. And she writes Columbo back right here. And last but not least, the amazing, wonderful Mineshaft reprint of number 4. I highly recommend this one. It just came out. It's also $15. You can go to mineshaft.org. I'll put the mineshaft.com. Sorry, I'll put the URL down below. And this is a reprint of number 4. Mineshaft is now on issue 45 with 46 coming out soon. And this is the issue that got sent to Robert Crumb. As a matter of fact, I have a personal note from Everett Rand, the publisher, co-publisher with Gio, and I forgot your last name for a moment, Gio, I'm sorry. Hey, Paul, here's a revised edition of an early issue of Mineshaft before we were publishing comics. This is the first issue I sent to Crumb through John Martin at Black Sparrow Press. And the next issue, number 5, featured Crumb's sketchbook drawings. And Crumb's been in Mineshaft, I think, every issue since. And you can see, you know, a lot of stuff of Crumb's that you'll never see anywhere else. But this issue is mostly, it's what I would call a little literary magazine. It has that feel to it. Poems and writing, and just good stuff in here. One of the things that impressed me a lot was this essay by Carl Orend. And this is an essay that's kind of about living in Transylvania. And but it's also, as you start reading it, you realize it's also about a lot of things. The cultural contrast with the way we live in the modern era, the origins of the idea of vampires, and myth making, and it's beautifully written. It says in the Chronicle of Our Village that one night en route from Medius to Brasov Vlad Tepes, the original of Count Dracula camped his army on the slopes between our village and the forest. Did my ancestors fear him or welcome him? In Romanian, there is no different word for dragon and devil. He was Dracula, the son of Dracul, the dragon, a famous crusading knight, defender of Budapest from the Turks. This is a different view. I haven't seen this anywhere else. Really cool. And that's just one sampling. The poems are just absolutely stunning. And there's even an essay by the publisher himself, Everett Rand, on Bukowski, called The Day Bukowski Died, Charles Bukowski. And this is a wonderful essay. It's very personal. The first time I came across Bukowski, I was in Hong Kong. Good stuff. If you know Mineshaft, you know this is good stuff. And this kind of helps you understand basically the roots of what Mineshaft turned into today. And there's a lot of comics now in Mineshaft. But underneath it all is this sensibility, this curatorial sensibility, and this literary sensibility. Not snobbish, real. Everett knows quality writing when he sees it. And he knows quality comics when he sees them, and quality art. So Mineshaft, reprinted number 4, just out. I think there's only been maybe like 200 copies printed of this, so it's a very limited edition. And you can't buy number 4. You can't find it anywhere. I think you can find it on the Mineshaft site, but it's at a very premium price. So here's a chance to get this. And something new has been added. I just gave you a glimpse. A new Robert Crumb drawing of Gus Cannon, the legendary banjo player. All right, folks, man, what amazing stuff in the mail. Go out, make connections, trade your comics, send emails, get to know people, send some money in the mail, and get some cool stuff in the mail. Yeah.